Hello everyone. I am the bright and beautiful Vina Maxino, and together with me is my best partner and friend, Sashi Matania.
Hi everyone! So Brina and I are so honored and we're really excited to be your MCs for day one. Welcome to Youth
Youth
for
for
Inclusion
Inclusion 2021.
2021. Alright. Wow, so I see so many people here today and I can't wait to get to know you all in the coming days.
Before anything else, let's talk about how we are going to make the most out of this event by introducing to you the Zoom tools.
Right. How we wish that we are all physically together right now, but it's okay. Hopefully, we get to meet each other in the near future. But in the meantime, aren't we all just thankful that we have platforms such as Zoom to still connect with one another? That's why we believe it's so important that we all know how to maximize this online platform.
We would like to request everyone to pay attention to the screen. If anyone wants to turn on the subtitle or transcript, find the live transcript button.
Right. And then when you find that, please click on the small arrow beside it and then select Show Subtitle. You can also choose to click View Full Transcript.
Next, if anyone needs assistance with translation, find the interpretation button.
Right. And then when you click that button, you can then choose your language, Japanese or Vietnamese.
Next, make sure your mic is muted so that we do not interrupt anyone or anything.
Right. And you will know that you're in mute if you see that red slash over the microphone symbol.
If you want to speak, please raise your hand first and wait to be called.
Right, that's right, Brina. So you will find the raise hand button when you click reactions in your screen. And when it is your turn to speak, that's when you unmute yourself by clicking the microphone button again. So you'll know that you're unmuted when there's no more red slash across the microphone button.
Give us a thumbs up if you know now. Give us a thumbs up if you know now how to use the Zoom tools.
Right. Thumbs up, everyone, if you know how to use the Zoom tools. Thank you so much, Brina. So, if you have any questions, we will not be using the Zoom to comment those questions. Please post them through Slido. Okay, so you will use your mobile phone to scan this QR code in the next slide, or you can go to www.sli.do and type in the event code, which is 087006. So remember, we will be using the same code throughout today's session. All right, so I hope all those slides were helpful. And now, to officially open this event, let us warmly welcome and turn our attention to the Regional President and Managing Director of Special Olympics Asia Pacific. Welcome, Deepak Natali.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Youth for Inclusion 2021. Several years ago now, we hosted our first regional youth summit in Singapore. As my first event as president and managing director for the region, I was delighted. Here was an event where we could bring young people, both with and without intellectual disabilities, together and together use their passion and their perspective to shine a spotlight on inclusion and what that means for all of us. That was the last face-to-face event we were able to hold before the world was disrupted by COVID-19, and it remains etched in my memory. It represented a light bulb moment, a moment where we could really understand what young people can achieve when given the opportunity. Fast forwarding now to where we are today, albeit in a virtual format, and we're taking this event one step further. This time around, we are looking squarely at the SDGs, a set of global goals that really help the global community to address some of the biggest issues that society faces today. Our work here at Special Olympics is about using sport as a catalyst. It's about helping people with intellectual disabilities to engage in the community through sport, but it just doesn't stop there. Beyond that, our programming fosters inclusive behavior, both in schools and in the workplace. We help to make education more accessible for people with ID, and we give them the skills and the confidence to be part of a working environment and gain decent employment as a result. When we think about that, what we are trying to achieve through these activities, Special Olympics is very closely aligned with the SDGs. And through our work, we know that people with ID can really benefit from working towards these goals, but they can also squarely contribute to making them happen and a reality. I hope that this summit, there is a distinct opportunity for you to learn more about Special Olympics and our relationship and alignment to the SDGs, but more importantly, how each and every one of us can foster inclusion and make the world a better place by contributing to their success and together making a real difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Deepak. Alright, now that we have officially opened Youth for Inclusion 2021, why don't we all have a fun game first to get to know each other?
Right. Awesome idea, Brina. So we have people here today coming from all over the world, right? And we all come from different backgrounds, different walks of life. And yet we are here together today to celebrate inclusion and to make sure that no one gets left behind.
First, we want to know what countries you are all from.
Right. So what Brina and I will do is that we will call out different countries. And if you're joining from Zoom, we want you to either send us a heart reaction or make a heart with your hands, whatever version you want, if you're from that country. But if you're joining us from another platform, please leave a comment and let's flood this whole event with lots of hearts. Okay, let's play the music.
Okay, let's begin. You here are from the Philippines. Mabuhay!
Mabuhay, everyone from the Philippines! How about Australia? Good day, mate!
Kiho's house from Indonesia. Sulamat siang.
Alright, hi Indonesia! And who here are coming from New Zealand? Kia ora!
How about China? Ni hao.
Wow, so many hearts! Hi everyone! Let's say hi to Pakistan. Salam!
Kiho's house from Japan. Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa! Hello! Yes, lots of hearts. How about who here are from Thailand? Sawadika!
Do we have friends from South Korea? Annyeonghaseyo.
Annyeong! Hello everyone! Wow! Alright, hello to Vietnam. Xin chào!
You're from Malaysia. Apa kabar?
Apa kabar? Hello from Malaysia. Alright, how about Nepal? Namaste!
Hi, hello, Bangladesh. Hello.
Bangladesh. Alright, make sure you're flooding our Zoom and our comment section. Who here are from Taiwan? Lin Ho.
Do you have friends here from Sri Lanka? Ano po one?
Sri Lanka. Do we have friends here from Sri Lanka? Hello, friends. How about Singapore? Hello, La.
Here's hearts from Samoa. Talofa.
Yes, hearts from Samoa. Hi, guys. And now let's say hi to Nigeria. Hello.
Good day to our friends from the United States of America. USA.
Hello. Good morning, I assume. Hello to Peru. Buenos dias.
You are from Cambodia. Siliap Soy.
Alright, we have friends from Cambodia. Let me see your hearts. United Arab Emirates. Marhaba.
Hi to our friends from Guam. Havada.
Our friends from Guam, hello. What about France? Bonjour.
We have friends here from Senegal. Salam alaikum. Salam alaikum.
Senegal, right? Are Brina and I pronouncing it correctly? Okay, so last but not the least, let's say hello to Timor Leste. Bon dia. All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for flooding our event with all the hearts. So now that we know where everyone is coming from, we now want to find out how you're all feeling right now. Are you excited? Are you curious? Let us know. So to do that, we will be using Slido, okay? So please use your mobile phone to scan this QR code, or you can go to www.sli.do and type in the event code, which is 087006.
Type in one way to describe what you're feeling at the moment, and we will see everyone's answers on the screen.
All right.
I'm so happy to know that everyone
Okay.
is really excited and energetic. Let's keep the ball rolling.
Right. So Brina, why don't we read some of the answers that people wrote here? I see a big word, excited. Super excited, happy, great, energetic, ready to learn. I like that. I hope we're all ready to learn today. Eager, feeling awesome, happy again. Overwhelmed. Oh no, I hope that's a good overwhelming feeling. Great. Okay, keep your answers coming in. We're so happy to know how everyone is feeling about today's day one event. So, okay, still coming. Awesome. Brina, can you read out some words that you see in the screen? Let's see.
I see fantastic, inspired, feel energetic, yay, feeling friendly, happy, happy to see everyone, cool, yay, inspired, woohoo, happy,
Okay.
yay,
Thank you so
fantastic.
much. All clap our hands. Thank you everyone for participating. As Brina said a while ago, let's keep the ball rolling. So now, as we all know, the theme is about leaving no one behind from Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. So it's quite a lot, but each one is indeed very, very important. So Brina, do you think we can somehow summarize the SDGs?
You know what, Sashi? I remember seeing a video that summarizes SDGs in a very unique way.
Video? Oh wait, Brina, I think I know that. Is that the rap video?
Yes, that
Yeah,
one. Everyone should listen to it.
I agree. Everyone should listen to it. So roll the tape, maestro.
The United Nations is an organization with goals of peace and sustainable development around the world. Their mission is huge, but we're breaking it down in 2 minutes. 17 sustainable development goals. Let's get to them, cause the more you know. Look, in some corners of the world today, people are living on $1 a day. Hey, that's not how it ought to be. So goal 1, eliminate poverty. And goal 2, root out hunger across the globe. There's 800 million people hungry, if you wanna know. Number 3 is health and well-being, and getting people the health care that they need in. Learning in school are the harder goal for. Education opens up minds and doors. Goal number 5 is empower girls and women so they can have the same rights that men are given. Number 6, people need water that's clean. Poor sanitation can spread disease. Carbon-free energy is goal number 7, and how to achieve it is the question that's pressing. But if we put our minds together and work hard, we can find a solution, I'm guessing. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. Now imagine that you work all day for no pay. Economic growth and decent work is goal 8. Goal number 9 is to foster innovation in infrastructure and industrialization. Goal number 10, inequality reduction. 11 is sustainable city construction. 12, well, that's sustainable consumption. So what we use matches up with production. Goal 13 calls for urgent action to combat climate change, cause we know what's happening. 14, protect life under seas. 15, protect life on land. Goal 16 is for peace and justice all over the planet. They're in high demand. And the final goal, number 17, is the critical factor, the heart of the machine. It's the strength in the way we achieve these goals of sustainable development around the globe. Yo, 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it.
All right, nice one. I hope you all enjoyed that video and got a glimpse of what the SDGs are all about. And I think that tune is going to be stuck in my head for quite a while.
Me too. But if we all want to learn even more, we would like to invite everyone to attend the SDGs workshop on day 2.
That's right. So please make sure that you register, okay? It's happening tomorrow at the same time. So tomorrow's session will be conducted by UNDP, or the United Nations Development Program, and by Jasmine Sharif, who is from our Regional Athlete Input Council. So don't worry, we'll explain more about the registration towards the end.
Now we would like to call on Bella Chu, Manager for Youth Initiatives from Special Olympics Asia Pacific, to tell us more about this year's theme for YFI. Let's give her a warm round of applause.
Woohoo!
Hello, and thank you for being a part of our movement to gather youth with and without intellectual disabilities, as well as partners from all sectors to join hands and take action for inclusion. I'm excited for our 6-day discussion on how we can leave no one behind in the Sustainable Development Goals, or in short, the SDGs. The SDGs are our shared responsibility as governments, companies, organizations, and individuals. With 15% of our global population living with a disability, we will not be able to achieve these goals by 2030 if we do not fulfill the rights of persons with disabilities and involve them as active agents of change. For as many as 200 million people with intellectual disabilities around the world, access to quality education and decent work opportunities is limited. People with intellectual disabilities who are from low-income families, live in rural areas, less developed countries, who are stateless, or women and girls may face even greater challenges. Our findings have shown that more than half of our Special Olympics athletes of school-going age do not have access to quality education or remote learning during this COVID-19 pandemic. Students with intellectual disabilities often do not receive the learning support they need to excel in schools. Moreover, staying in school also remains a challenge. For students with disabilities, more than half drop out after primary school and do not go on to complete higher levels of education. Exclusion from learning opportunities can have long-lasting impacts on employability. In fact, the unemployment rate of persons with disabilities is often more than double of people without disabilities. Evidence from United Nations has shown that people with disabilities mostly work in welfare-based jobs with low wages, or corporate social responsibility projects, self-employment, or in the private sector as an expendable workforce with little job security. Without ensuring quality education and decent work for persons with intellectual disabilities, we will not be able to achieve the SDGs. I believe the way forward is one that is both disability inclusive and youth-led. I look forward to hearing from all of you your thoughts and ideas on how we can make this happen together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bella. That was perfect. Now I understand better. All right, Shashi, what's next?
Right, that's right, Brina. I understand so much more now. But up next, we have an interesting activity and an engaging panel discussion. So we would like to call on Shruti Mehta, who is the Organizational Development Consultant of Special Olympics Asia Pacific. Everybody, please welcome Shruti.
I am going to now take you all through a wonderful journey in the lives of three children, Nina, Fido, and Sita. I want you to now all close your eyes and bring to life in your minds the stories I take you through. Sit back, relax, and enjoy listening. First, Nina. Hi, I'm Nina. I cannot see. Yesterday was our class picnic. We went to the sensory garden. Our teacher, Mr. Wood, took us around. We heard water flowing over stones and the song of birds. The garden had many lovely scents. One plant smelt sweet. Miss Wood told us it was honeysuckle. We also touched some plants. Some were hairy, others were soft like velvet. I put my arms around the tree. I loved it. We sat on the lawn to have our snack. I had so much to tell my family. It was a wonderful picnic. Next, Fido. My name is Fido. I'm scared of field trips. Maps confuse me. I worry if I will find my way. Last week, I had a happy surprise. We went to a museum where the signs were large and wonderful. Little footprints on the floor showed us where to go. Each section had a guide to help us. We could also listen to a voice that told us where to go next. I wish all museums would be like this. Then I wouldn't get lost. Finally, Sita. I love the water, the sea, rivers, lakes, waterfalls, pools. My name is Sita. Last year, I had an accident. I now get about only in a wheelchair. For my 10th birthday, we went to the seaside. I wanted to feel the waves, and my dad made that wish come true. He took me to a special beach. They have carts that float. So they put me on one, and we went into the water. I could dip my hands into the sea. I felt the splash of the foam on my cheeks. It was the happiest day of my life. Imagine this inclusive world where every human has the opportunity to live fully, and children like Nina, Fido, and Sita can be free, full of joy, and be whoever they want to be. I hope that took you all through a wonderful journey and you all let your imaginations go wild. I want to stop here and ask, are these stories real? I wonder what you all are thinking. Uh, can stories like this happen? Can children have access to such amazing facilities irrespective of their disabilities? To move on, next slide. Yes, these are real. In England, in a small town in Bournemouth, there's a sensory garden where blind children can go. They can hear the sounds of leaves and the sounds of water and smell various flowers and plants. It's a beautiful experience. You can feel and appreciate nature irrespective of whether you can see or not. Another example happens to be in England too. Next slide is one of a museum, the Museum of London, where in fact there is a map which makes it easy for people having autism or other intellectual disabilities to really understand where to go and what each place looks like. Look at that smiley face of a noisy space with a person with a headphones on it. How simple and easy would it be if we had maps and directions all picturized like this? And finally, next slide, imagine. Imagine being able to enjoy the sea even if you don't or can't walk or don't have limbs. In Spain, in beaches in Barcelona, they have something called amphibious carts that work on sand and water. And this man here can enjoy the waves and the water even though he can't walk. He can appreciate the beauty all around him. That's magical. That's beautiful. Next slide. Now I want to pause and would want you all to think of these three children that I shared, examples of Nina, Fido, and Sita. These are beautiful stories that we can see can be true. And in fact, they're stories of children who had access to good facilities, environment, in fact, to a good education that can allow them to potentially be whoever they want to be, and that they can work and grow to have any kind of job they might wish or desire to have. This panel that we're moving into now, moving forward, takes us through these two specific components. SDG 4, quality education, that is having access to facilities and experiences that make us grow. And then talking about decent work and economic growth, employment and jobs, allowing us to be who we want to be. So we have this fantastic panel ahead of us, and I want all of us to truly think how we can join hands to build this truly inclusive world within the framework of these two SDGs. So as we move on, I'd like to share, once again, remind you of the questions that you can ask through Slido. Yes, you can join at slido.com. That's the code 87006, or please scan this. The panel discussion is going to go on for the next 20 minutes. We have an amazing set of panelists ahead of us from various walks of life, from athletes to people working in the development sector to the private sector to teachers to youth leaders. So I'm excited to invite them all. Please ask your questions and please don't forget to upvote, to put a thumbs up to the questions that you want the panelists to answer. So I'm looking forward to getting a lot of these right at the end of the panel. Great. So let us just dive in. And to Ben is a active advocate for the disability community, on top of being a Special Olympics athlete, coach, as well as volunteer. He serves on numerous councils at both an Asia Pacific and regional level, and has played a really illustrious role on as a board of director on the member of the International Advisory Research and Public Policy Committees. So to just kick off, let me ask Ben. Ben, could you share with us what does leaving no one behind in SDGs 4 and 8 look like to you? And why should we really include people with intellectual and development disabilities in the SDGs? Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, oh, I think I'll just start off by saying that I really did like those three stories, but if I'm going to be honest, that's part of the problem. Is too often people think, I mean, I think the definition of success in this space needs to change. We need to move away from just, wow, there's the fantastic school, there's the fantastic employment agency, there's the athlete that's just won an ESPY and everyone claps and cheers, because not good enough. Because for every one of those stories, you could find another 10,000 of the complete opposite. And that's just reality in this situation. So, yes, absolutely, people with disabilities should be a part of it, should be a part of the conversation, and not just listened to. I mean, actually a part of the conversation, not just people in wheelchairs and Down syndrome, I mean, all groups. But there also needs to be a focus on individual action, because that's the only thing that has ever worked in the history of humanity is individual action. It's not goals from a big higher up organisation that actually do it. So really the focus should be for all of us what sort of outcomes we as individuals would like to create. Here's the thing, it doesn't have to be hard, complicated or big. You know, we're talking about education and employment, right? So for examples, you know, if you happen to go down the path of wanting to start your own business, why not look to employ people with disabilities, or make it a policy that you want to hire people with disabilities? Now, Special Olympics can help you for a start. I mean, two ways. One, we got people with disabilities, and two, we got a program called Unified Leadership that's about us talking to companies about what we've learned about how to make inclusion real and helping companies develop policies to do it. That is one way you can do it. Another way is you could even talk to the organisation you're working with right now and suggest to them that they come down and volunteer at our events, or start a unified sporting team within the organisation. You know, in other words, those are the things that really matter. Those are the things that really matter. In school, well, you know, you could always be like Jamie Bieremir and talk to your principal about starting a unified PE program. You know, you could go down and volunteer at our events. You could try and encourage your fellow youth to do the same at school. You could talk to the school about having people with disabilities, you know, come to the school and do talks. If you decide to become a teacher, you could come down to our organisation or get involved with people with disabilities and learn about us, so that you make sure as a teacher you do understand this sector. Those are the things that really matter. And I think right now, if I'm going to be really honest, exclusion unfortunately is real. Exclusion is happening every day. You know, every day under all sorts of various guises, we're all being told that either we're a disease or there are certain parts of our community that are a disease. And that the answer is only one way, and that's it. And that if those people don't follow that way, they're a disease, they're going to cause problems, they don't have any rights. Every person with a disability on this call knows what that's like, guys. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. That's what this sector faces every day. And again, it's no different than the situation with the vaccine and the pandemic. People, on both sides, a lot of people have a lot of very highly strung opinions. But here's the thing, inclusion's about acceptance. Look, I don't know the exact reasons why people want to get the vaccine. I don't know the exact health reasons why people may not want to get the vaccine. What right do I have to make judgment on that? I don't know. And and the reality is, and this is a lesson for all the youth that you should learn right now, is look at what happens when you do this. You have wars, you have mental health, you have suicide. Everything that's bad in the world is happening more and more and more. My country, for example, is not a country at the moment. It's 8 different empires. And if you cross the border, you're an illegal alien. So I guess the challenge that I have to everybody is how can we be accepting and understanding of all? How can we show acceptance? How can we show dignity through our actions? And using this as an example, how can we all accept each other, including, say, for example, the unvaccinated? Because that's the important thing. Because that's the important thing about inclusion is to really think. So I just
with the words individual action, which is extremely important in acceptance. So to thank you so much for that. So to move on, the next panelist is Zoe.
Thank you,
Zoe
guys.
has worked with UNICEF Malaysia on disability inclusion since 2015. And more recently, she's also expanded her portfolio to include gender integrated programming too. Zoe identifies as a woman with learning disabilities and has both a personal and professional commitment to upholding the rights of child and adults with disabilities. So, Zoe, to ask you next, why should people with intellectual and developmental disabilities be included in the SDGs, and how can we do so? Over to you.
Thanks, Shruti. So I'd like to start by flipping this question upside down and moving away from placing emphasis on examining why people with disabilities, intellectual or development, should be included in the SDGs or within any part of our society. Instead, we need to demand that inclusion of persons with disabilities is the normal standard or the default setting for everything, for everywhere, and for everyone, especially when it comes to our rights and inclusion with the SDGs. When we flip the question, we then shift the emphasis away from being expected to justify our worth and our right to full and equal participation. This shift then allows us to look at the problem of disability exclusion from a rights and social-based perspective, rather than from a charity-based understanding of disability. The social and rights-based perspectives view inclusion as the responsibility of all in society. It also views that the solution to exclusion lies in adapting or changing society to achieve this inclusion. And it certainly does not advocate for any adaptation to a person with disabilities in order for them to fit in or to be able to justify their worthiness to be included. So you see, when I get this, I guess, asked this question a lot, and it inevitably always makes me feel disappointed every time. It makes me feel like I have to continually prove my worth to society as a person with disability, and also defend my right, my universal right to inclusion. So I prefer to flip that question and be asked instead about what changes society should make to better include persons with disabilities like me within the SDGs. And in the answer to that question, I would say the only way we can ensure our inclusion in the SDGs is if we create or are given the opportunity to, one, participate in decisions that affect our life, two, be heard, respected, and valued with dignity, and three, be represented in greater numbers at the places where decisions are made. The difference in phrasing this question and the language I use may seem very subtle and a little bit pedantic at times, but language has a huge impact on how we identify ourselves, how others see us, and ultimately shapes our access to participate and be included in society and ultimately within the SDGs. Thanks, Ruti.
Thank you so much, Zoe. That was really clear and precise. And I think flipping the question is something that all of us should think about. It makes so much sense that the onus is on society and not the person, and not the person with disability. Appreciate that thinking. Uh, to now have next with us, we have a youth leader, Ginanda, who's a youth project designer at ADB's Youth for Asia team. And as a part of the Youth for Asia team, she focuses on integrating meaningful youth engagement into ADB operations of sectors. She has over 7 years' experience with ISEC, which is one of the world's largest youth-led organizations aligned with the SDGs. So, Gina, in your work with ADB YFA, what challenges do people with intellectual disabilities face in SDGs 4 and 8, and how should we include them in these goals? Would love to hear your thoughts, Gina.
Thank you. Thanks, Shruti. So before I share my answer to that, next slide, please. I'd like to introduce Youth for Asia first, if you are not really familiar with it. So you can click like 5 times. Youth for Asia is an initiative that is mainstreaming meaningful youth engagement directly into the ADB's operation, and that we enable young people from different background, together with the government, to work to deliver projects, components that are contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. And we wanted to shift the mindset of youth engagement being tokenistic into meaningfully engaging young people into our programs. Next slide, please. So meaningful youth engagement occurs when youth representatives actively participate throughout the program life cycles and that enter into the youth adult partnerships. And so how do we do that exactly? Next slide, please. Yes, so there are 5 interconnected pillars that I would like to discuss today that are operationalizing the meaningful youth engagement to our operations in daily operation in Youth for Asia, and to make sure that we include young people into that. So first, um, you can see the first pillar is the youth diversity and representation. We wanted to recognize that young people are not homogeneous group. They're coming from different background, different gender, age, ability, etc. And that we wanted to make sure that youth representation are fair, it is inclusive, and it is context specific, and that can promote the unity among the youth involved in the program. And so the next one is the youth participation participation can be understood in a variety of ways, but it is a core ingredient in meaningful youth engagement, that youth participation that promotes meaningful youth engagement, it must be right-based, must be age and developmentally appropriate, and that it is continuous, remembering that young people are not a homogeneous group. And then last but not least is the meaningful engagement both cultivates from and also leads to a sense of general multidimensional empowerment of young people. And that youth empowerment has the following characteristic. The first one is the personal empowerment, the community impact, and the system influencing. And so to give you an example, next slide, please. I'd like to walk you through one of the current project that Youth for Asia is leading at the moment, which is the youth-led poverty and social analysis in Indonesia. And we recognize the findings or the challenges that young people are facing within the community. Next slide, please. And that according to the OECD, the 2 of the most significant challenges facing the young people today are the education crisis and the growing job crisis, especially with the coronavirus that is happening today. It emphasizes these 2 crises. So these issues are interconnected and touch every one of the SDGs. And these challenges were also affected the young people that we engage in Indonesia, specifically in the city that we are doing this project at. So in one of our focus group discussions, the young people expressed that they have limited access to informations and opportunity, as what Bella mentioned in the opening video. And those were limitations to trainings opportunities, job opportunities, volunteering opportunities, that just emphasize the lack of resources for them to grow both professionally and personally. And so to wrap this up, meaningful youth engagement is, and to be inclusive is as a journey that is a long way for us to achieve that. But Youth for Asia, together with our partners such as Special Olympics, are excited to promote and engage young people more meaningfully. So thank you. Back to you, Shruti.
Thank you so much, Gina. That was really insightful. Youth adult partnerships, yes, they're key. When we talk about youth as partners in development, people forget that we're talking about working collaboratively and together through meaningful youth engagement. Thanks for throwing light on that, Gina. Well, here we have our next panelist, Raylene, an advocate of human rights, gender equality, and social inclusion, primarily through policy and advocacy. Uh, She's worked in the Philippines for 5 years as an advocacy officer that pushed for the enactment of various children's rights legislations including the Inclusive Education for Learners with Disabilities Bill. Rain, it's a real pleasure to have you here. And as a policy advocate, what are your thoughts on how we can include people with intellectual disabilities in policies that advance the SDGs? Have you witnessed any best practices or bad examples that we can potentially learn from?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you repeat the question again, Shruti? Sorry, I didn't. I'm not sure if I got that clearly. Hello.
Yes, really. Let me repeat the question. Sorry about that. That got missed. So I was introducing you as a policy advocate and wanted to understand what are your thoughts on how we can include people with intellectual disabilities in policies that advance the SDGs. Have you witnessed any best practices or bad examples that we can potentially learn from? Over to you, Raylene.
Okay, hello. Yeah, I hope that you can hear me clearly. I'm not sure if my connection is that stable. It's raining where I am right now. But again, before I proceed and answer the question, let me introduce you very quickly to the organization that I represent, which is Plenary. So we are an organization that has presence in several countries in the world, including Asia and the Pacific. We are focused on advancing children's rights and equality for girls in all their diversity, which includes children and youth with disabilities. So to answer the question about how we can include people with intellectual disabilities in policies that advance SDGs, first, we need to ensure that their rights are recognized, promoted, fulfilled in policies and programs by the government as the primary duty bearer and all the various sectors, including civil society organizations and educational institutions. And there are practical ways that this can be done. One is to exert all efforts to promote their rights, as reflected in several human rights principles, including the United Nations on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and as recognized in the Sustainable Development. Let me walk you through some of the SDGs that are related or that focus on people and youth with intellectual disability and with other disabilities. So it's referenced in various parts of the SDGs and specifically in parts related to education, employment, inequality, accessibility of human settlements, as well as data collection and monitoring of the SDGs. So for instance, in Goal 4 on inclusive education and equitable quality education and promotion of lifelong learning, there is a call to ensure that there is equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the including persons with disabilities. There's also a proposal for building and upgrading education facilities that are child disability and gender sensitive, and to also provide safe, nonviolent, inclusive, and effective learning environments for all. In Goal 8, to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all, the international community aims to achieve full and productive employment and decent work for and, people in all their diversity, including for persons with disabilities and equal value. Close 10, which strives to reduce inequality within and among countries by empowering
I think we've lost her a bit because of bad connection, but it was very interesting to hear what she had in terms of genuine participation for youth leaders and for people with disabilities on the panel. So thanks for bringing that up. And I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to have more discussions. Sorry about the connection. But maybe to move on, we have Simran with us, who's a 22-year-old Teach for India fellow who has in fact volunteered with Special Olympics as a youth leader for the past 4 years as well. As also a former youth activation intern, Simran has spearheaded youth activities at Special Olympics Bharat and led the National Youth Activation Committee. She's a passionate change maker, believes in the power of youth to build an inclusive society that is free from all forms of social injustice. So, building on all that's been said so far, Simran, could you maybe share as an educator, as a volunteer, as a fellow, why do you think we should include people with intellectual disability in SDG 4, quality education specifically, and what are the various ways to do so? Would love to hear more from you, Simran.
Thank you so much, Shruti, for that introduction. Um, I would like to begin with a bit about myself. As Shruti mentioned, I'm a 22-year-old teacher and advocate for quality education and inclusive generations. I work with 40 creative and curious underserved students from a small slum in Pune. And next slide. And this is exactly how I introduce myself to my class. They think that I look a little like Mowgli and a little like Dora. And it's so fun to see how the kids have expanded my creativity, and I'm able to provide them the space to expand their creativity through the classes. Next slide. And I am from New Delhi. And next slide. And this is a question that I very vigorously discuss in my class. Why is education important for me? I feel that because the kids see how education has turned my life around and made me the person I am, and I'm super proud of it. It has opened doors for me, given me a lot more opportunities. I think education is something that should is a right, and the quality education is something that everyone deserves, irrespective of where they come from, who they are, and if they have any disabilities or not. Next slide. So today we are going to talk a little bit about the question that Shruti asked: why should people with intellectual disabilities be a part of SDG, or Global Development Agenda? Next slide. Have you? And my question to you all is: have you ever heard about subconscious bias? So, subconscious, we're going to think about that. Subconscious bias is when we have a certain judgment or preconceived notions or ideas about someone or something without understanding their context better, right? So, having an unconscious or a subconscious bias is usually when you have no experience whatsoever of your own, but you've heard stories, you've had ideas, opinions adopted from your community. So, when we talk about representation of people with intellectual disabilities in policy development, making agendas, and having their own voice in the decisions that they make, it is very low. The representation, it is very low. What if I tell you from now on, next slide please, that you're not allowed to play sports because I believe that it hampers your mental health. I believe that you are bullied in while you play sports, right? So I'm taking that decision for you. Next slide, please. I am pretty sure that you would not like it, right? And moving on from that, if I say that you are supposed to go to a special school because I believe that you are being bullied in a mainstream school, so I'm taking that decision for you, right? Without having my own personal experience of the whole situation, right? So next slide, please. So I'm pretty sure that you would not like it if someone else is making the decisions for you without having that experience. Next slide. The decision makers for people with intellectual disabilities are majorly their caregivers, adults, or people without intellectual disabilities, right? Mostly those people like me had an unconscious bias. I'm guilty of admitting that when I started my journey with Special Olympics, I had that unconscious bias. And through my experience at Special Olympics, I've evolved my subconscious bias. And it is very important for us to give people with intellectual disability a voice to share their experiences. The reason why my subconscious bias was evolved is because I was in that situation with people with intellectual disability. I heard their experiences, and it changed my perception a lot. And people with intellectual disabilities must take a charge, especially on those decisions that influence them. And gone are the days when, if we are organizing a dance, people with intellectual disabilities are going to just sit on the sidelines, right? They're going to do a lot more. They're going to do planning with us. They're going to make their own decisions and tell us what helps us and them together in a situation. And moving on to how I believe that we will be able to include people with intellectual disabilities or their voice in decision making is, next slide please, next slide. When I said about the dance, we should include them in policy making. We should include their voice in mobilizing, right? And moving on, next slide please. And it is not there in the world is more what is not there in the world is more voices and more opportunities for people with intellectual disability, more financial stability for people with intellectual disability, for them to feel confident in their own skin. Next slide please. And they are the ones who can represent their own, and we must include their perspective while making decisions for them or with them. Next slide please. But how do we do that, right? That is a question that I feel is very much left out. How do we make that change? We talk about change all day, but what are the actionable steps? And that is what I am going to tell you from my experiences, what I did. Next slide please. We can include people with intellectual disability in making the agenda, right? So when I talk about making the agenda, that is including their ideas of what they believe that the event is, what they believe, what their understanding is what we are doing going forward, right? Including them in making SDG agendas, including them in making any event agendas that you want to include them in. Next slide please. Making inclusive youth task force, I think this personally worked very well for me. I've led the national youth activation committee in India, and there we had amazing youth leaders, and we worked with special schools, and then we integrated those special schools with mainstream schools. So there was an inclusive youth task force, and I was in awe of the events that they organized, the awareness that they were about to spread, and the inclusion, the true inclusive generation that they were about to that they are on at pace to make for themselves. Next slide please. And thirdly, awareness about SDGs in people with intellectual disability groups. I feel that awareness is the key for us to make that change. When you're aware, you can make your own perceptions and you can make your own choices, right? So if people with intellectual disabilities are aware of what opportunities lie for them, what opportunities lie in front of them, I think we all as a collective will be able to make good decisions, would be able to make very rich decisions for our whole generation. So I believe that awareness, collectiveness, and definitely inclusion as a whole is very important for us to create that inclusive SDG planning and actionables for the same.
Thank you, Simran. That was insightful. And to think of subconscious and unconscious bias, these are really important points and aspects that all of us should take into consideration. Great. So now to move on, we have Chaitanya, the Director of Global Compliance and Operational Risk at the Bank of America, Hong Kong. And in a career spanning almost 2 decades, Chaitanya has spent the last 12 years in Bank of America. Uh, he currently leads the personal account trading, registration, and licensing compliance markets outside of the US. Chaitanya leads the disability inclusion strategy for Asia Pacific region, and he chairs the employee network in the region. The chapter currently has presence in 7 countries in the region, and he also represents region in multiple diversity and inclusion committees. We'd love to hear your perspective, Chaitanya, of the private sector. Why do you really think we should include people with intellectual disabilities in SDG 8, decent work and economic growth specifically? Have you seen any best practices or bad examples across your career? Would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Shruti, and first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I'm really kind of honored to be here with this esteemed panel, right? So, uh, I wanted to kind of talk about a few things that were on my list, but then I also took some notes in when certain panelists were talking about, and kind of really resonates well with me in terms of what we are all trying to achieve. It's a very, very common approach and a common agenda that we are all driving, right? Uh, when we say good examples and not so good examples, right? I really like what Ben said, right? There are good examples, and I know we shared some stories as well. I would not want to say that I have encountered bad examples. The way I want to put it is we have encountered good examples and limited examples. And the reason I want to put it that way is highlighting to what Ben said as well, right? For every great story, there are possibly thousands of stories out there that have never been told. Or where people are struggling to get that level of support. I think it's extremely important, however, to talk about these good stories because that's how we'll kind of create that dialogue. That's how we'll have the drumbeat going. That's how we'll influence the generations. So I think the way I want to put it is not good and bad examples, but good and limited examples, and we want to make sure that we see more and more such examples. I think another point that I want to kind of highlight it, and this is what Zoe mentioned as well, right? Flip the question, right? Why do we want to kind of have that debate today that do we need to include people with ID in SDG in the corporate sector? The point is flip the question. Why not, right? I think one point that I want to kind of call out is, and this is something that I started talking about it many years ago when I got involved in driving disability inclusion, is that very simple scenario, right? When somebody goes for an interview face to face, puts his or her CV on the table, the hiring manager would basically ask, "Hey, introduce yourself, talk about your professional career, talk about your current organization," and that's how the conversation usually gets going. The point is, if somebody goes into that interview with a disclosed ID or a cognitive or a physical disability for that matter, the conversation would either start with, "Hey, why don't you talk about your disability?" Which, again, it's unfair to start off with. And then the second point is, even if the conversation starts with, "Hey, talk about your profile, talk about your experience, talk about your career in your current organization," I think on the back of the mind, and we all can relate to it, back of the mind, the hiring manager is thinking, "Oh, is he or she the right talent? Would this person be late for work? Would this person have a long learning curve? Would this person have that level of commitment that I'm expecting from this job?" And again, to Zoe's point, flip the question. How can you guarantee that the other person who does not have a disclosed disability would have that level of commitment, would have that level of learning curve? So I think it's very, very important to kind of flip that question. It's very important to talk about more and more good examples so that we don't say that in future that we have limited good examples. And I think to the point that Simran just mentioned, right? Unconscious bias. And we've been talking about this a lot in Bank of America. We've been training a lot of managers over years and years in Bank of America about how to get rid of unconscious bias. And I think that's where the culture really comes into the picture. It's very, very important for all of us to not have that unconscious bias. It's very humane to have unconscious bias, but I think it's very, very important for us to fight that unconscious bias and look everybody basis the talent that they present. I want to kind of just close with one point, right? And this is what I always say when I talk about disability inclusion. When we hire whatever sector, when we try and include people with ID or with physical or cognitive disabilities, we want to just mention one point. We want to hire people basis their abilities. We don't want to reject them basis their disabilities, and that's how I want to put the message across.
Awesome. Thank you, Chaitanya, for leaving us with that thought and also for, in a way, bringing together all the important components that the various panelists have shared. So, to move on to the next specific component or section of the panel discussion, I'd request the panelists to maybe share in brief or just about in a minute this specific response or the follow up to these questions. So maybe again to start off with Ben. Ben would just like to hear the specific challenges that you have faced or the challenges that you faced in advocating for disability inclusion. Uh, could you share any experiences or how do you address these challenges?
Yeah. There's a few things I'll say. First of all, limited examples. No, look, You only have to look at the Royal Commission in Australia on the disability sector to say, or how can I say it? People sitting in their own shit for a week, being chained to a bedpost, people being sexually and physically abused. That's not a limited. That's just a bad example. I see that play out all the time where I work in my organisation. I see young men, with autism coming in that have been suspended, abused, you name it. So, I'm sorry. I think we need to wreck that. Also, we do need to prove ourselves because when you get down to the bottom, like I have, when you start talking to actual local sporting clubs and local businesses, whether you have a disability or not, you got to be able to prove what you can do. So that's been the space that I've been working in. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. It's difficult. One of the major reasons why it's difficult is I'm a person with a disability. So whether they will actually take me seriously is something I've got to continue to work on. But I have found ways to make it happen. I know I'm hopefully if this we don't end up in a lockdown in Queensland. Hopefully I'll be co-hosting a local football competition in about a week's time, and that took about 3 or 4 years of hard work, going out there talking to various clubs, showing them the results of what we have done in Special Olympics, creating programs, because that's the thing. They all got good feelings for inclusion. They all care about it, but the hard, heavy lifting maybe not. And that's why I'm saying to the youth that it's individual action that matters. And I'm serious with what I said. We've all got to be able to prove what we do, regardless of whether this is the disability sector or not, because that's the only way you can really get people on board.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for that. That's really insightful. Zoe, maybe next to you, could you share maybe some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, for me, the challenge is when it comes to advocacy, I commonly use two different approaches depending on the content and the audience. So one is called disability mainstreamed, and the other is called disability specific. And to develop a successful advocacy campaign that seeks to challenge negative attitudes and shift mindsets and change behavior to achieve inclusion of persons with disability, we often need a combination of both. And this is often referred to, as you see on the slide, the twin track approach. So mainstream is when you ensure that a diverse group of persons with disabilities are represented in mainstream advocacy and or messaging. And then targeting means that you focus on a specific issue or the needs of a particular group of persons with disabilities to highlight a specific experience that they are facing. Although both approaches are quite different, I'd say that many challenges are shared, and when advocating on disability inclusion and equality, I'm just going to give you three more common challenges that I face on a day-to-day basis. So the first challenge I often hear and see is the fear of the D word. Many people are afraid of using the term disability when advocating for disability rights and disability equality. And I regularly see the use of made-up terms, and just a trigger warning before I say these, terms like differently abled, handy-capable, special needs, or even just referring to us as PWD, like an acronym, like that's all we are, a series of letters. And I find it really quite a challenge to have to continually educate others on the basics of disability inclusive terminology. So that for me is a personal challenge. Using that kind of disability inclusive terminology is key over the often preferred ableist language that's more commonly seen in the media. So the second challenge that I want to talk about is very similar to Janada's comment about the fact that often we're looking at people with disabilities or assuming that people with disabilities all look and sound and act the same. I have a disability, others may have disabilities, and we really don't look, sound, or act the same at all. And even two people with the same disability can often present in different ways. But we're often lumped together in one homogenous group without any recognition of our diverse identities that make us very unique in a very complex community. Not only do we have visible and invisible disabilities, we have subcategories of disabilities within both. We have men and women with disabilities, children, cis and trans, differing sexual orientations, races, religions, legal status, economic backgrounds. The list is endless. But each of these intersecting parts of our identity have a huge impact on our support needs, and our experiences of stigma and discrimination. So as such, I feel like our diversity and heterogeneity has to be recognized, and we have to get over that challenge of the homogenization of our group. And the last challenge I'd like to share is the negative stereotypes that invoke pity and perpetuate persons with disabilities as passive victims who are suffering from their disability. They have no power, no independent thought or will. This style of communication is rooted in the charitable and medical understanding of disabilities, where the audience is encouraged to feel sorry for the person with disabilities, to donate money or some other form of aid to that person, or to give them this miracle solution that will cure that person with disabilities. Ultimately, this kind of perspective of looking at people with disabilities equates a lack of disability to happiness, to fulfillment, to perfection, and it's a completely ableist way of viewing disabilities. So in summary, my three main challenges that I face regularly on a day-to-day basis when looking at advocacy and trying to fight for change and inclusion is: one, the fear of the term disability; two, the assumption that people with disabilities are all the same; and three, perpetuation of negative stereotypes that place persons with disabilities as passive victims with no agency or independent will.
Thank you, Zoe, for always being so clear and precise. I think it's really insightful, and some of the things you point out, especially how diverse a group the community is spot on. Uh, Raylene, I know we lost you earlier, but could you share maybe some of your thoughts on the challenges you faced in advocating for disability inclusion? Okay, sure. Okay, I realize Raylene's disconnected, but no problem. We'll definitely hear from her again and share her thoughts. Maybe to go on to Chaitanya, you're a champion of diversity, equality, and inclusion. What's been some of the challenges that you've had to overcome?
I think first and foremost, it's about driving that culture in an organization as big as we are. I think that's one of the challenges that anybody would have who wants to kind of drive any level of diversity and inclusion strategies or programs across the enterprise globally. Right? We're talking about so many cultures. We are talking about so many countries. We are talking about different connotations. We are talking about, again, like Zoe mentioned, right? Not using the disability word, right? And that resonates very well with me because I've been kind of talking about it. If you can't use the word, if you can't accept the word, you can't change it, right? So you have to go ahead and be open and transparent about it, and that's how you will change things in future. So I think overall, from a culture perspective, one thing that has really helped us overcome all these challenges is a very strong message from the CEO, is a very strong message from the senior management across the enterprise, is a very strong employee network and an affiliate network system, the operating model that we have to drive diversity and inclusion, and disability inclusion is a part of it, and just making sure that we keep the dialogue going. I think this is one area where we are still very, very underrated in terms of the level of dialogue that we have, and this opportunity is obviously a fantastic opportunity to keep that dialogue going on, and we have to do more and more of this and other opportunities to overcome these challenges. The over communication is never going to be over communication when it comes to topic like disability inclusion.
Thank you, Chaitanya. I see strong leadership is key, and I can see Raylene is back on. Maybe we can hear from you. Just a few thoughts on the challenges you faced overcoming disability inclusion. Okay, I think Yeah, I think maybe that was, yeah, that was the wrong signal. I'm sorry to keep losing you and getting you back on, Raylene, but we'll hear from you next, little later. Simran, would you like to share your thoughts on the challenges you faced?
Sure, definitely. So, as a young person advocating for the change, I think the biggest challenge that I've faced is the generational gap that we have in the different context of different generations. So, I would, next slide, please. Has this ever happened to you that at a dinner table conversation, you've been sidelined because you've been asked, "Are you old enough for that? Are you old enough to have that conversation?" And then, or has it ever happened with you that when you ask your kids about how to use Instagram, and your kids are like, "You're too old to understand that. You won't get it because you're too old," right? This is what is called a generational gap. Next slide, please. When two generations have substantial differences in their mindsets, technology, ecosystem, etc., that is when the generational gap widens. So young people have been considered inexperienced and incapable of bringing change for a very long time. And I feel that in Special Olympics, I think that was a turning point for me when I realized how important it is for the older generation to accept the fact that yes, young people have a potential, and in the intersectionality of it, young people with intellectual disabilities do have that potential to change, to make a change, to bring about a change. And I think youth leadership is about being confident. It's about being organized, being real, and it is about optimism and having that vision, about that hope that yes, we can make a change. But I feel the most important pillar of leadership is collaboration. Next slide, please. And that collaboration, when I talk about that collaboration between young and the experienced, it is refreshing to see that our voices are being heard, and not only heard but given the center of the stage. Like, I'm sitting in a panelist with much more experienced people than me, but still my voice has been given the same weight as everyone else's, right? And that is very refreshing to see, and that is something that I've started experiencing through Special Olympics. And it is very important for us to have that collaboration to minimize that generation gap and work as a collective to include everyone, to have an inclusive generation, not just our generation but the generation that is behind us, or um, ahead of us. And as they say, words spread faster among the young people. We can catalyze that sustainable development change through awareness, through innovative ideas, and with that experienced hand to hold. I feel that it could be a very strong team, and I think that is a challenge that I faced earlier with that, when I was being sidelined, when people like me, people with intellectual disabilities, young people, being sidelined for not being old enough or being experienced enough. But I think that is something that I'm a lot of things I've been able to overcome. Next slide, please. Through that collaboration, and I feel you plus me is we, and we together can make a lot of change. And it would be easier on both the ends to make that change if we have that collaborative approach towards the SDGs and towards anything for that matter.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Simran. I think that was insightful. Gina, I would love to hear from you as well in terms of some of the challenges you think ADB Youth for Asia has faced in making youth more inclusive in some of their projects.
Thanks, Shruti. I can definitely resonate with what Simran said. As a young person myself, I get a lot of comments of, "Are you young? Are you old enough to be where you are right now?" So definitely hits home, that one. So again, learning from our project, the rising challenges that we faced were the representatives and that the fear of not being heard. Um, there are a lot of young people who, especially young people with disability, express that they are afraid that if they are participating in our projects, then what would be the outcome, or why would it matter? So that's really very saddening, and also that just shows that they haven't given enough space or environment for them to speak out their insight and their thoughts. And so during this pandemic especially, we also have a lot of issues with connecting with the young people, within the communities. And especially what we have also talked about a lot in this conversation is that young people are homogeneous, but they're not. They are coming from a lot of different backgrounds. And with this project, we are focusing on people who are from the vulnerable groups, which means they're like young people, and they're coming from the less fortunate group of people. And so then we face a lot of digital divide and also language barrier, where we were unable to reach them. And so what Youth for Asia did last time was to make it through peer-to-peer approach that are close to the communities and the people. And in this case, as you can see in the presentation, we mobilized 21 youth ambassadors who are the representatives from the communities, and that as what Simran said, we leverage the impact through the partnership, be it youth adult partnership, be it peer-to-peer partnership, who are more specialized in the group. Like, for example, we also partners with Special Olympics when it comes to approaching young people with disabilities, because in that way we can ensure that we implement our projects appropriately and that we design a solution that are safe for the environment and also for the young people themselves. So yeah, thanks, Shruti.
Thank you, Gina. No, that was perfect. And I think that's bringing us almost to the close of our panel discussion. We do have the Q&A piece left, which I think we have some interesting and engaging questions. But this has been insightful, engaging, interesting, effective. I can think of many words to describe all the thoughts that have come up. So many thoughts to go back with: individual action, flip the question. I think Zoe's focus on the fact of the diversity of this group of persons with disabilities is so important. They're all so different. And how youth empowerment and meaningful youth engagement is at base key. Uh, so thank you so much for all your thoughts and for forcing us to think deeper and to think much more and widen our perspectives. Uh, so let's move on to the Q&A. I think our viewers have been asking a few questions. So let's see what they are, and maybe we can dive deeper into that and then move forward to the next section. Great. Could we have the questions on Slido? Great. So we can see a lot of people have thoughts around this aspect of bullying. So this is from Jasmine. And we have around youth engagement and youth leaders. But let's take a few. So let's take the first one. And maybe, Ben, if you could help us answering that. Around sometimes in mainstream jobs, there are companies that bully individuals. How can one overcome this? Ben, could you share some of your insights on that?
Yeah, I think maybe I guess there's several things you can look at. I guess you can look at whether you actually want to work in that place anymore. I think also I really feel what you should be doing is having a conversation with the boss or certainly someone in the HR department about that, and having a conversation, and raising it and certainly talking about it, and try and work with the company on trying to resolve the issue. Uh, and that can involve a whole bunch of different things, including maybe having a conversation with the individual who's doing it, maybe having a look at what's going on. Now, if it is the entire company, then I think maybe you can look at talking to government agencies around that, or disability advocacy groups, and maybe they can come on board and help you. But yeah, so that would be my advice.
Thank you, Ben. I think that's an option, right? We have people to talk to. Let's reach out. And Ben, I love the way you layered it. If it's within the company, go to HR. If it's the whole company, look at disability groups, look at the government. So at every level, there seems to be someone that you can talk to. Maybe let's have a look at the questions again. And I think this one, Chaitanya, I think you'd be able to really throw great insight on on what do you think is the role of chief disability inclusion officers in MNCs, and how are they going to change the way we see office culture for people with disabilities? It's linked a lot to what Ben also shared, but would love to hear your perspective from this side.
Yeah, I think this is a very important question, and I think the bigger topic is the role of chief DNI officer as an organization. If you have this role, that means it's the first step. It's not about showing it to the shareholders. It's not about going and showing it to the board. It is about making meaningful difference to the culture of the organization. I think it's a topic that has been evolving over the last many years, and it's going to further evolve. But I think the role of a chief DNI officer in an organization as a first step basically entitles you to go ahead and set the culture of the organization, right? And that's the most important step. You can do a million things in terms of making sure that you have the right recruitment strategies. You hire people based on their ability. You don't differentiate between talent. You provide the right level of technology and infrastructure support. When you hire somebody who has a disclosed disability, you have a right mix of programs that serve your clients well, that serve your shareholders well, that serve your communities well. But I think the biggest and the most important topic or the responsibility that is of the chief diversity and inclusion officer is to set the culture in place. Get the dialogue going, what I said earlier. Make sure it's a continuous engagement program or a strategy as we move forward. It's not something that you can have one or two conversations in a year and say we are doing a good job about it. It has to be part of the fabric. The chief DNI officer has to make sure that the first and the foremost thing that you need to be doing in a multinational organization across the enterprise is to set the culture right.
Thank you so much, Chaitanya. I think that's really important. The leadership setting the tone for the conversation, setting the culture right. And thank you so much, Ben, for also throwing insights on so many relevant and important things. That's really, really important. I mean, this panel has been uh, insightful for so many reasons, and I'm so glad that this diverse group of panelists was here today. We have youth leaders and from the private sector and advocacy, and it's just amazing to have all these mixture of thoughts. And I do hope that there are other opportunities for a panel like this to connect and move forward this conversation on disability inclusion. So thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it on a Sunday afternoon. It's amazing to hear all of you all, to learn from all you guys. So thanks, and hope to see you on the other days of the panel. And let's move on. And let me call back our great MCs, Prina and Sashi, to pump up the energy and to continue this fantastic event. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
That was a really interesting discussion. Thank you so much for keeping us all engaged.
Right, Rina, I agree with you. I really, really genuinely learned so much from everyone. And I just can't wait to learn even more in the coming days.
Me too. But first, ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to this summary for the interesting discussion we just had.
Hey, hello everyone. I hope you can see the visual on the screen. Just give me a thumbs up if you see it. All right. Okay, so I'll just quickly walk you through a visual journey of today's discussion. So while the speakers were speaking, I was illustrating. So we started with the opening by Deepak, who said that they've been using sport as a catalyst and how it has been really important to foster inclusion and education in the workplace. And then Bella pointed out that the SDGs are our shared responsibilities and that the way forward is disability inclusive and youth led. Then Shruti walked us through a visualization of the possibilities, and she pointed out some examples such as the sensory garden, the sensory map, and amphibious carts for beach access. And so for our panel, Benjamin talked about how inclusion is about acceptance, and it's important to show dignity through our actions and how individual action matters. And then Gina talked about how inclusivity is a journey. She discussed the 5 pillars of meaningful youth engagement, intergenerational collaboration, and the peer to peer approach. And as for Simran, she talked about the importance of decision making and the awareness of the SDGs and possibilities. And as an example, also the Inclusive Youth Task Force and the importance of collaboration. And as for Zoe, she discussed the how inclusion should be the default setting and how language matters and how it's important to participate in decision making, be heard, respected, and valued, and be represented in greater numbers. And as for Raylan, she discussed how rights are recognized and promoted in policies and programs, and also their work on data collection and monitoring. And last but not the least, Chaitanya talked about driving the culture of inclusion and how leadership is really key in all of this. So that's me, Desiree from Tofu Creatives. Thank you, everyone, for letting me draw the big picture with all of you. It was a pleasure to be here. You may follow the visual journey through a link that we will share, and for sure, we will share this graphic with all of you. Back to the MCs.
Woohoo! Oh my goodness, I really love that presentation and summary. Thank you so much, Desiree from Tofu Creatives, for summarizing that very interesting discussion for all of us. It was very creative, don't you think, Rina?
Wait, Sash, this more. We have a performance by Octo Dominos.
Oh, awesome! So everyone, let us warmly welcome Octo Dominos.
Thank you. Thank you, Octo Dominos. That was amazing. I hope everyone had a great time today. I had so much fun being your MC.
Right, indeed. Thank you, Octodominos. That was the whole time I was like, cool. So anyway, I also had so much fun. I wish we're together right now, Brina, but that's okay. So thank you, Brina, for being a great MC and for being my best partner and friend.
Before we say bye to everyone, we would appreciate it if everyone would participate in this poll.
Right, so this poll will be done through Slido once again. So please use your mobile phone to scan this QR code or go to www.sli.do and type in the event code 087006. So please answer the poll, everyone. Okay, we have 10 people who answered. We have 31 answers. So again, to answer the poll, scan the QR code or join through the website and enter the code, event code. Thank you to the 50 people who answered. 50 plus. So please don't go yet because we have a few announcements after this poll. So let's just all wait for a bit. Okay. Oh, all right. Okay. So thank you everyone, and please don't forget to please register for the other exciting sessions coming this whole week. Okay, so someone will be sharing in the chat box the link to register. Um, Right. So you will see the registration link in the agenda sent in the chat box, or go to www.tinyurl.com/YFI 2021. So that link will bring you to this agenda, and then you get to see what are the discussions for each day, and then you decide which days you want to join. So you just have to click register here over there, and then that's it. So you have to register for any of the sessions that you wish to attend. So we hope to see you guys in the coming days. Thank you, everyone. I hope you had a great time. Thank you, Brina. And thank you to all the hosts and the panelists.
Thanks,
Bye,
Sashi.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
I miss you, Brina.
Namiss you, Sash.
Yeah, we are in the place to be. Yeah, yeah,